myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on that.
Hi and welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith, and it is another episode of Newcastle United. This is a special 2-hour episode as there is a lot to cram in about NUST, and I'm delighted to say I'm joined as always by Steve Hasty, by Neil Mitchell and by Keith Patterson. Hi lads.
How do? All right, Steve.
Great to see you. So we left the last episode on NUSC, Newcastle United Supporters Club, Steve Hasty, and that's where we finished that. And of course, that was the thing that preempted, that the organisation that preempted the trust. So in your capable hands, I guess, tonight, because you are somebody who, you and Mitch, of course, know a lot about the early days of NUST. Me and Keith obviously know a little, and obviously we're involved to some smaller degrees. And then obviously, we can all talk about what's going on with NUST now. But over to you, Steve, and where we're finished off with NUSC.
Yeah, well, obviously NUSC, just as a quick recap, was the Newcastle United Supporters Club, which started just after the Hull City game when Kevin Keegan had walked, and there was the big protest, which we talked about in the previous episode. So we had this Supporters Club, but chugging away at the background through Colin Whittle was always the embryo of an idea that we should really be looking towards setting up a supporters trust. Now, that was fine. I don't think there was any objections to that. I think everybody saw that it was a natural progression. If you had a lot of people that were interested in fan ownership, you had a disunited football club, but you had an owner who had already said that he was selling up. It sounds familiar, doesn't it? But what we're talking about at that particular time was a football club which was probably valued somewhere in the region of 80 million quid. Yeah. So we started to think about it. And, while the supporters club carried on, there was a little group of people that were beavering away in the background looking to basically just explore the possibilities of how we could create a supporters trust. There was an established mechanism for doing it. It worked through an organisation called Supporters Direct. And obviously what we did, what the guys did was that they went away and held numerous discussions and emails and correspondence with Supporters Direct, just to establish exactly what a supporters trust was, first of all, see whether we fitted into it, see what the issues might be if we converted it into a supporters trust. But just as importantly, decide how we could discuss this with the people who were backing NUSC and see whether that was the direction they want to go at. So we were very, very keen to make sure we had a thorough and frank dialogue with the members, or with the people who were backing NUSC, of which I think we had somewhere in the region of 28, 29, 30,000 names on the list, people who had replied and returned, people who had joined and made donations, people who had filled in the little slip that was attached to the pamphlet that we talked about last time, that Keith had printed up, which had a little return thing that you could send back with a little tick box and your name and address, and if you wanted to make a donation or you just wanted to be affiliated and be part of the setup. So that's what we did. I mean, we had we were very lucky because we've got Newcastle fans. We know how educated Newcastle fans are anyway, but we had some great people who in those days understood a little bit about social media. Obviously, we didn't have Twitter, we didn't have Facebook or anything like that, but we had chat rooms and gossip rooms, or whatever you want to call them. And we had
message boards.
Yeah, exactly. Lads who understood the embryonic way that social media was gonna catch on, and how it could be a force for good in terms of getting the message out. There was a huge platform as part of that called Toontastic that was already up and running, and it was Peter Whitfield who was heavily involved in that. That did an awful lot of the IT behind the scenes on the website for NUSC. We created a members room where you could start to ask questions, and that was perfect because we had that social media environment in its embryonic way of communicating and getting feedback from interested people. that we could suss out and we could gauge the strength of feeling, if you like, not only towards what we were already doing, but where we wanted to go moving forward. But we also saw the importance of, I think, of face-to-face meetings. And that's when I think we really saw the benefit of setting up the roadshows. And the roadshows were, again, another way of sitting in front of supporters, just like ourselves, explaining to them where we were with Newcastle United, where we were with the Mike Ashley, where we were with what we were picking up on Takeover or not. But more importantly, getting that message out, or getting the word out, that we would seriously contemplating going down the line of a supporters trust. And we did roadshows from as north as Bamborough to as south as Brandon, and right into your area in your neck of the woods, Keith, if you remember, and all points east and west, you know, from Hexham to golf clubs in Wrighton, to North Shields, to Paul Cannell's bar at the top of North Shields there on Queen Alexander Road. We went to Bedlington, Ashington, God, you name it. I mean, Mitch, you were very, very much a part of that, because at that particular time you were one of the people at the forefront of NUSC and pushing that sort of way of and direction that wanted to go. I mean, you remember the road shows?
We at one point we were doing a couple of weeks and spending time. You know, it would be Forest Hall Cons Club one night, and then it would be down to somewhere in Durham the next night, and we were doing that. And we did Neville's Cross.
Neville's Cross Workman's Club. I met you down there.
Aye. And I think of all the things I did with NUSC and NUST, the thing I value the most are those road shows. They were hard work. They were hard yards. But getting out to actually sit face to face with parts of the fan base you might never have interacted with, trying to understand, and it became useful later when it transitioned into trust, and we used to start to work with, and people used to come to work, bodies used to come to work, and can you understand this, and can you understand that? Having sat down with so many different people, with so many intelligent and well thought out and articulate opinions that may have been entirely different to mine. And it was a real eye-opener. I wish I'd understood more of it going into it, because I think I would have got even more out of it. You'd be sitting one night speaking to three lads in Forest Hall who'd never been back since Gordon Lane's Supermac. No, that was my line in the sand. I've not been back since. Yet they were there that night, and they wanted to be there that night because Newcastle United is still their club. Even though they've had a massive disconnect from the club, they were still there, still viewed it as their club. Us, we, our, you know. And then the next night, you'd be talking to people top end of Northumberland who put all kinds of ridiculous yards in, doing away games, and because coming down from like Amble, coming down from Berwick even, and then hitting Southampton at God knows what time of the day, and understanding their supporting experience and what they find frustrating about the club. And the one thing I learned, and that's where I bang on about getting Newcastle fans together, it's like herding cats. Everybody wants the same thing, but they want to do it in their way. And they also want to feel that you've reached out to them and they've been heard out.
Yeah.
Even if what you end up doing is totally not what they want, they'll often then go along with it because they feel like they've been heard out. And they feel like, well, I got my opinion across, but I see why they want to do it that way. And without that, we couldn't have done a lot. From a personal point of view, it's why when we talk about things on the Fab Four, and when it was Three Amigos before that, why I get across to people, if you think we sit here and agree on everything, you're so wrong. Yeah, so wrong. And that's important. because that's what you can do in a situation like that is debate it, work it out, hear out all sides, and then agree on a tactical situation about what you're going to do going forward.
Yeah.
And that for me was the value of the talk-ins and the roadshows. And I was grateful to people like Gibbo and John Anderson who give with that time. I mean, I could listen to Gibbo. I've heard every one of Gibbo's stories about 17 times now, and I still laugh at them, and I still piss myself.
Yeah.
I still want to hear all about Gaza and Rome, and he's on his bloody motorbike in a German stormtrooper helmet, giving it the V's behind him, and I want to hear all of that all over again. I want to hear about John Anderson talking about Justin Fashanu being in a bath on his own, while everybody else is in the other bath. And, all of these things from inside people who care about the club. And it was great to share it with other fans and see their reaction. But also, it changed me and my attitude about how the fan base works forever.
What it did for me, Mitch, was it gave me an awful lot more respect towards the fan base, towards the people who did the 9 yards, as you call it, the troop, and the people who you could learn something from, because at every road show you learn something new. You learned something. You learned even more about the passion. You learned about that this is when I mentioned it once before about an old uncle of mine who travelled down to Portsmouth. We talked about it on the radio show. To Portsmouth for a match after leaving work at some 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning or something after a night shift, and going. This was in the early 1950s, and we had guys coming and talking and telling stories, because it was very much an open forum. It was very much we'll listen, you talk, we'll do a little bit, we'll give you a little bit of insight of what we've done so far, where we'd like to go, but it was very much an open floor. And if people wanted to criticise us, or people wanted to tell us we're doing it wrong, as many did, with gusto as well. And
sometimes quite robustly, yes.
That's very, very, very much so. I remember Blakelaw Club. I didn't know whether I was going to get out alive, but that's happened many times in Blakelaw playing football. So that wasn't nothing new, was it? But you know what I mean. It was very much it was an education. It was what you had to do to understand the fan base, to understand the strength of feeling, and to decide which direction we thought we could head, while bringing the people along with us, the fans along with us, the people who wanted to support an ever-growing and at the time what we considered to be a new way of approaching things, a more formalised way. I think when we started off, we had visions of basically a little badge, a little sticker or whatever, Newcastle United Supporters Club, and it wasn't, there was already people doing bus trips and stuff like that, and we didn't want to travel there. And it was implicitly put to everybody that we're not stepping on anyone's toes here. We're not putting anything into place that was going to remove the people who had set up buses since the little shop in the Haymarket had shut. We weren't going to step on the toes of anyone who was selling merchandise. We weren't going to step on the toes of anyone who stood outside the Irish Centre with a little plaque of badges that you could get before the match. We weren't going to step on the toes.
I remember discussing this with Amanda, who runs Shambles Travel.
Yeah,
and a bus I used to go on quite regularly. And one of the things that, she said was, does this mean you're going to be running a travel club? I says, no. What it means is I'm going to be telling people to get on your bus.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's about working together. It's about reaching out, and within the fan base, there's so many people, and we found this grew as the Supporters Club became the trust. People with talent, people with skills, people with knowledge in sectors, different sectors of work, and we're prepared to come and give that time pro bono, absolutely free.
Yeah,
because it was all about the football club, but equally it was trying to get a harmony where everybody, right, such and such wants this, we'll go and see them. It's not the Supporters Club going to be doing it, but we can feed you to the right person.
Yeah.
We ended up dealing with queries with the box office that the box office should have been bloody dealing with. We were sorting people's bloody away tickets out and how you can apply for this and how you can apply for that. by the time it was full pelt, I think between me, you, and Bill, we were on first name terms with bloody Stephen Tickle in the bloody ticket office. Yeah, I think he recognised my voice when he picked the phone up.
Certainly recognised yours. But you know what? This was. I mean, and it still goes on. By the way, that this still happens. We've still got a situation where fans come to, and I know this for a fact through the fans forum and through the work that the current lads at NUST have done, the likes of Thomas and such like. They've still got a huge input into the ticketing situation. As and we can talk about all that sort of interaction, but. What was important at this particular time? Obviously, there was a lot of fanfare. There was a lot of talk because if you remember, no sooner that had the protest happened than on the Monday, Ashley was saying that he was selling up and this type of thing, and that's when we started to, after a few months, we started to get people coming to us and saying, you know what, if you were better structured, if you did have a more formalized structure behind you, and we did have a fairly formal, but it was, I would say it was very much a supporters club forum.
It was.
That we have, and that's why we set it up. But we had various business people coming to us and saying, you know what, we've heard about supporters trusts, and we also had Supporters Direct giving advice, through contacts that they had in the Northeast, saying, you know what, if you were a supporters trust, you might be able to get a little bit further. You might be able to introduce yourselves to business people. You might be able to introduce yourselves to financial people. And there will be people out there who are interested in something that they could work with supporters on to try and buy the football club. So that I think probably galvanized our thoughts an awful lot more to come into line with some of the things that Colin was wanting. And that's when we held meetings, didn't we, in the Irish Centre, where Supporters Direct came up, and we got them, rather than us telling the membership what it was all about. We got Supporters Direct to come so that we could learn as well alongside the membership as to exactly what is this going to entail, what would it mean, how would it structure, how would it be set up, what is a constitution, what is a set and affiliated rules, where would we stand financially, where would we stand corporately, etc., etc. There was a hell of a lot of work at that particular time to talk about.
Tell you the thing that galvanized me behind it was listening to Colin.
Yes.
We're at the Roadshows talking about, we've got this idea of turning into the trust. And the more he talked and the more I listened to him and the more I understood it, the more it seemed to be the right thing to do at the moment. Because one of the constant questions you get asked on the Roadshows as a supporter is, well, who are you, like?
Yes.
Who are you? And so to be able to turn around, and this is something that I think we'll probably touch on a little bit more later. The legitimacy of an organised constitution as a supporters trust is something that could be exceptionally powerful.
Yeah.
It's something, however, that you can also hide behind. And I think you've got to work very hard to make sure that you're always doing it. The legitimacy is used in the right way and slanted at the right angle, not used as something as a shield to hide behind on occasion. And but at that time, that additional legitimacy, because by that time we were starting to regularly, we'd grown to the point where NUSC had enough. Well, after we gate crashed the boardroom, we had enough influence and perceived power that land bias, we were talking to land bias every other week at one point, and quite openly.
So getting back, I don't want to jump too far ahead, Mitch, but just getting back to the formation, the foundation of the trust, Steve. So you have these, you've had the roadshows, you have this meeting with supporters direct. What was the next stage from there? What was the feedback from fans, membership, and the committee after that meeting at the Irish Centre? Yeah,
at that point, I think we put it out to a vote. We asked people, this is what we plan to do. If you agree with it, if you disagree, and there was a vote went out, and when we came back with what people would describe now as a mandate from the members, it was a mandate to explore that and see whether we can move into a more formalised structure, and that meant that we were given a skeleton framework from Supporters Direct on what a Supporters Trust would be, what it should look like, how it needed to be constituted, what the rule book would need to look like, but also how it could be adapted to suit Newcastle United fans, because our rule book might have been slightly different to Altrincham, or it might have been slightly different to Wrexham, or Poole, or whoever it was, whether you were, a Division 1 team, or as it was at the time, or whether you were way down the pyramid.
The one that kept pointing what was Man U, wasn't it? Man U Supporters Trust was the one that they kept pointing us at and saying, look, we think you could be bigger than that.
That's right. And they were very much business orientated, and we didn't see ourselves as that. And I think that's what excited the agenda of Supporters Direct, because they saw a different group of people to the Manchester United one. The Manchester United one had involved the White Knights, and they were really, really looking to basically buy the football club, run the football club, and take over the football club. Ours was very much we're an organisation that you as a football club should be listening to. Yes, there were aspirations, I'm sure, among sections of us, which we'll come on to. But it was very much how can we do this? What do we need to do? How are we going to do it? And we broke off into little sort of working parties, and we used emails, and we explored. We held meetings, and I think there was 3 or 4 little groups, and we looked at different facets and different aspects of how the organisation would run, what it would be like, what it would need to do, what it had to put into place, and then we started to bring those together, and from that embryo became the constitution of Newcastle United Supporters Trust. I actually found a copy of the constitution.
Did you?
I did, yeah. And funny enough, I've never seen it. This was the first time I'd seen it in 11 or 12 years. I remember it being on when eventually we became NUST, and we flipped the website from NUSC to NUST. We changed we created our own brand. We created a logo. Our brother-in-law and myself designed the bridge logo that we had. That we thought we wanted to be something fresh and something modern. So we used the Millennium Bridge as a strapped logo type of thing. And that when we did that purposely, because we saw the Tyne Bridge as old Newcastle, and we saw the Millennium Bridge as modern Tyneside, and Gateshead and Newcastle coming together, because that was what it was about. It was about the region, and obviously the Millennium Bridge had only been up I think it was sort of 9 years at the time, so we saw that as something new and fresh. And that branding and that whole new world that we were trying to move into with a new website. And I think everything was on there: the rule book, the constitution, the subgroups. There was, I think, they created a message board so that you could interact with each other. Members could send their thoughts in, their questions and queries, and they would drop into little boxes depending on what the topic was. That's the logo. That's the one. Just something, something refreshing, if you like, something different, something sharp, without blowing my own trumpet.
I was always disappointed it wasn't a tango ball.
I know you were.
It's a 10-bob floater.
That's Brandon for you, yeah. We picked the penny floater. We thought we had more chance of scoring with a penny floater.
A better swerve.
That's right, aye. But no, I mean, there was a message. Like I say, there was a message board on there. There was the ability for supporters to actually enter into a dialogue about finances. There was another one you could enter into a dialogue about takeover, about purchasing the club. You could enter one about ticketing, and so it went on. And it was very quick. It was quite interactive. we had a one that was between just the committee members or board members, as the word, so that the board members could interact with each other very, very quickly. I suppose it's sort of in an early day format of WhatsApp, but in terms of the board members, but not for the membership. It wasn't. It was something that that some of us thought was vital, because that communication with the membership. So the roadshows carried on. We got where we wanted. We had the vote. We had the mandate for the membership, and flipped it. And it wasn't much long. It wasn't too long after that. I mean, I remember spending an entire Easter weekend trying to work out, write up and get comments back from people like Neil and other board members on what the membership structure should look like, how we could have a membership, what would the members gain, what would different ones. We wanted to have a junior NUST. There was lots of things. There was, you could pay for life, you could pay for 10 quid. I remember a huge big discussion about whether the membership should be 10 quid or free. I remember there was like, should little crazy little things that you don't think of, like, say, if I joined in August, would my membership run until July, or would it run till the end of the year, because we ran it was an annual membership and things like that. And then we had, if I pay a tenner and I'm only in for 3 months, should I get 7 months or like £7 back because I haven't paid the full whack? And we're trying to, this was the minutiae that we went into, trying to get everything right that would satisfy everyone as many people as we could. And that was where we were, probably up until the 2010, I would say.
Who was on those early committees, Mitch?
Okay. Well, the initial interim chair was Malcolm
Shields.
Shields, yeah. And then we had obviously Steve, myself, Bill, Corcoran. We had Lisa Bullivant.
Yep.
Tony Stevenson. Paul Brown King.
Mark Jensen.
Mark Jensen.
Tom Lynch, Peter Whitfield,
Colin Whittle.
Trying to think who else we had.
Had Michael Martin stepped away by then?
Yes.
Yeah, he had, hadn't he? Yeah.
Michael stepped away because he was concentrating on work commitments, family commitments, and his fanzine, obviously. But yes.
True faith.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
It was a lot of these guys. Some of them I knew. Some of them I knew of. Some of them I didn't know from Adam.
Yeah.
And again, doing things like the roadshows and doing things like, there's unmentioned people there, people who put massive hard yards in, like Tom Lynch, bless him, who just was always there. He does a mean quiz as well, by the way. You ever want a quiz writing, can ask Tom for a quiz. And people who were prepared to give that time and that dedication to something. And there's a lot of people who not get named, and whose names I've forgotten, passing a time, who really should get praise for it. It's not just gobshites like me who are prepared to pick up a microphone and stand in a club in front of people and don't give a monkeys about whether they're talking or not, and who they're talking to, and whether they've got a script or not, and can just do it from the lip. But I know that's not everybody's cup of tea. But what it was amazing was everybody found a role, and by God, to put the hard yards in. I lived in North Shields at the time. I pretty much lived in my study. The amount of emails I was sending, I was trying to go back through my emails, and it's interesting, the account I used to use, I thought I'd lost access to, and it's part of Google now, and I've been able to link it through to me current email address and find all these old emails. Sometimes 20 or 30 an evening, which is now WhatsApps, but at the time that was the only way to communicate. I even went out and bought myself one of them early Nokia flipping off and it's a computer, close it and it's a phone things. So I do emails wherever I was. Christ knows what my phone bill was in relative terms.
I think you were the first person that I'd come across who had a BlackBerry as well at the time.
Aye, yeah.
proper yuppie, wasn't he?
Oh, he was. He had the suitcase. He had the attaché case. He had the lot, man. He had the lot. But you know what was interesting was that we had to form what we called an interim board. So the transition period from NUSC to NUST, we basically tried to keep the rules as they were prior to setting up an election process. And even an election process wasn't going to be the most simple and straightforward, because there were rules that had to be followed, rules laid down by the Cooperative Society and by Supporters Direct, etc., etc. As the means, as part of the Constitution. And you had to do that, and you had to have people there to cover it, to make sure it was almost part of like the Electoral Reform Society at the time, because that's the structure that you had bought into, and little things like that cost time, but they cost money as well. So naturally, what we were always trying to do was make sure we weren't spending the members' money on things that didn't need to be spent. You know, like could we get around the rules of the Electoral Commission by having someone who volunteered, who we didn't know, or we could go to from that we knew in business, who could come in, a financial person or an accountant or somebody who involved in local government that could come in and could oversee an election, for example, to make sure that it was all prim and proper and done in the correct way. So for the first, I think, of 6 or 8 months, we ran under an interim board, which was basically the transitional board between NUSC and NUST. And that would have been around about 2009, summer of 2009. And then we held the elections. And the elections were for all of the particular. I think it was for 10 board members. The Constitution actually lays down that you can have additional people brought in to do additional tasks that can be sitting on a board but are not part of a board, if you like, in terms of voting right. So you can have other people that get co-opted later on. Wasn't it the behest of the board?
Wasn't it a case of, though, some of the interim board remained in place? It wasn't a full board election, because I think that's how, when Malcolm stepped aside and everybody said, well, who's going to be the new chair? And I mustn't have been paying attention. And they said, any volunteers take one step forward, and you lot all took a step back. And there's me thinking, oh, apparently I'm the chair now.
That's right.
Isn't that how I stayed on from interim to initial? I think it wasn't quite a full board election. I think it was, but you're right, it was about 10 places out of about 16 that were up for grabs. It wasn't quite as straightforward as that.
That's right. Yeah, certainly wasn't. But then we held we carried on with the communication, because we saw the communication as absolutely vital with the membership. It was important to get that website up and running. Once we became a trust, and we'd got Peter to flip the NUSC to an NUST one, so that it was all branded up, etc. And then we went into the, like as Neil says, the first real election, which I think I don't know, I came 7th or something in it with about like 190 votes. I think the maximum was, I think Colin got 270 or 280 votes. It was, you know, it wasn't, you weren't getting voted in by the hundreds of thousands or the tens of thousands even, you know. It was very much a, 280. And I think cut-off point was like 197, and I think I had 197, and the next one was 195, and I managed to scrape in or something like that. And I think Neil was above me. I think Mark, because obviously Mark was well known in the Northeast and among the fans because of his role with the MAG. And Colin, as I say, because of the Save Our Seats and stuff he'd done with Keith back in the day. And because he'd been out there on the roadshows as well, you know, Bill Corcoran. Yeah. There's another one. Bill came in with his financial acumen, and it wasn't long after that I think it became serious. It became very, very serious, and it became at times quite fraught and frantic among the board, because I think it, as always happens in those situations, you suddenly start to look at, well, which direction are we actually going to be heading? You know, are we? Some people thought, now we're trust, that was it. We don't have to do anything. Other people thought, now we have to do 10 times more. Some people were sitting in the middle. Some people were non-committal. And that was very much the sort of discussion points, really, that were heading at board level. Probably things that we should have already had ironed out, if the truth be known, at that, you know, long beforehand. I think circumstances.
But it was the uncertainty about who was going to be there and who wasn't, and who were you going to be dealing with post-election. But also, you know, in a situation like that, as a trust board, you walk a really fine line, I think, between there's times as the trust board you've got to lead, and you've got to say, this is where we're going. And there's a lot more times where you must absolutely 100% be guided by your membership and reach out to your membership in every way you can to shape how you go forward as a trust. And there was 100%, some people on that committee didn't want that. They just wanted to lead.
Can I say something here? Can I say something?
Hello, Keith and me, lads. You were there. You were the same as me.
I thought you'd been on another call.
I'm listening to this, and well, I made the call up, don't you know? I listened to this, and it takes me right back to the time, because, as you know, I knew you two quite well, and I was very close to Colin Whittle. And I went on them roadshows. So when you went down to Neville's Cross Club, I was there, and I brought the car load lads up. And you're right. You bang on about this. You enthused Newcastle fans into thinking something was going to happen that was going to take all their opinions on board and you'd get listened to. So I bought into it at the start. And it's interesting what you've said, because on the NUSC, it was like the SMB logo, that one with it, you know, the round logo. It was like NU and the C upside down, which we all loved that logo. And when we saw your new trendy logo with the Millennium Bridge, us traditionalists like the Tyne Bridge better, and we thought, well, that's a bit modern. And what happened is, I think you did an outstanding job on getting all the information in. I think the road shows were brilliant. And I might really put the cat on my pigeons here, because I remember back then saying, this sounds great. I think we're all going to get a voice. And then you got that information, and then the next thing you had to do was use it. And what happened is you had to make a plan, and out came the trust. And from then, I can remember as clear as day having a conversation with Colin Whittle, where he says, Keith, we want you on board. You're one of them people who can help us. You can help make it business-like. And I said, what's the purpose? And ultimately, at that time, I was told it was to buy some of the club. So I was told very, very early doors that back then, that eventually trusts own clubs. And back then I thought, nah. And that was nearer when it was feasible. But you're right, there was a mountain of work done to get your model. But then, even I, back then, can remember some of them people that were involved saying they didn't want to talk to the members no more. There was people on your committee back then, and I'm not going to pull punches, they were telling people back then that they didn't need to go and talk to the members anymore, and they didn't need to do roadshows anymore. And you've just said tonight that the roadshows were invaluable. Well, they were a great thing to be a part of. They were a great thing to listen to. There was great involvement. But then when people at the top don't want to do them no more, then why? What's it about? Because that's where the members are. And that's where the 14,000 members still are now. They all want a voice. But how much does the 97% of people voting for X get relayed to the board who's running it? That's my doubt. And back then, It was £10 membership. Steve said, was it 10 or 3? It was a tenner, and I paid the tenner. I know it's only 3 now, but then I dropped out because I wondered. It didn't sound at the end when I dropped out as though it was like them roadshows. It was as though the message from the roadshows, the likes of you two, got lost at your committee level.
Because there was definite divides at committee level about where you should go.
It was the people not wanting to talk to members anymore.
Yeah, 100%.
There's that word that creeps up in every single episode of Newcastle Disunited. Our series of shows.
Yeah.
Divide.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was super frustrating because those of us who'd spent the time and effort doing all of that to get there, like I say, the stuff I learned from those roadshows
massive
was huge, Keith.
Yeah.
Huge, and still to this day gives me the ability to reach out to any Newcastle fan and have a conversation with them, face to face at their level in any way they want to, and even if we don't disagree about it, it's not a biggie because the big thing is Newcastle United. That's what we're all interested in.
Well, like if Steve Wraith says there that this divide comes in, it sounds like you had a committee of 8, 10 people. And if there's anybody in that room says, but I don't need to talk to members anymore, the rest should vote them off. Because you set that up based on listening to members. You did roadshows based on listening to members. The whole trust was supposed to be about members, not about the committee.
And that's the thing, like you rightly say about the roadshows, was to be able to go and spend time listening to people and hearing them out. And even when they felt that they'd been heard out, if you did something different, they said, but you came and talked to us and I felt like you'd listened to us and you felt like you're taking it all on board. That's what Newcastle fans want most of all.
Yeah. But what you also did at that point, Neil, was you were able to go back to them and you were able to explain to them why you couldn't go ahead in the direction they were taking it or wanted it to be taken, because you were able to tell them we couldn't do it because of X, Y, and Z. Not because we just couldn't be bothered to do it, or not because we're ignoring you.
Not because we don't give a stuff about you. Yeah, exactly.
But when you suddenly put the shutters up and you decide not to talk to them in the first place, that communication, that way of talking, that way of extrapolating everything goes out the window. And I mean, it's interesting what you say, Keith, because if I remember rightly, what happened at this point was we had the interim board. And everybody, for a fortnight at least before the election of the new elected board that members had voted on, everybody around there felt as though, well, we got the results and we felt, right, well, great. That means that we're going to carry on. Neil will be an excellent chair. Neil will do that. The vice chair is going to be the person who's been sitting behind him. The lads who have been looking after media will carry on with their role with media. The people who have been looking after membership will continue to look after membership, and so on and so forth. The lads who, like Colin, looking after legals would continue with that. I remember going into the boardroom and Neil sitting there. I'm saying boardroom. We're actually in a room in the
Irish Centre,
somewhere upstairs, and sitting there and all of a sudden, Neil starts the meeting and a hand goes up and there's 1 or 2 people had been elected that we didn't know or weren't part of the original setup. And somebody piped up and said, well, I think we should have an election among the board over who should be the chair. And some of us just imagined that it was just going to,
it could be Neil.
Yeah, well, basically, yes. I mean, every time we're playing, why would you want to change something? But no, somebody wanted to put themselves up and said, well, I'd like to be the chair. So that came as a bolt out of the blue because the conversation for the previous couple of weeks had been all geared around and everything, everything we were going into that meeting with well thought out, well discussed in pre-meeting terms, the rubber stamping of and carry on as before, carry on the business, carry on the road shows, carry on the dialogue, etc., etc. And we got hit with that. and it was like, whoa, hang on a minute, you didn't want to be up front for the last 18 months, 2 years, but you want to be up front now, or you want to be sitting in the big chair, for want of a better.
We need a new chairman, and it needs to be me. That's right. That's what happened.
Almost, because this person, because it had been decided that they fancied it now. They got a mandate, they felt, because they got the votes, and they fancied having a shot. And I just remember being very disappointed at that. I felt let down. I felt as though, we had to say something, which some of us did and disagreed, but didn't realise that things happen in smoky, dark rooms before you go into a meeting, and it's like a fait accompli, because there's enough people being canvassed from around the table that are going to give the thumbs up to that. And I think it'd be really good. I think I'll vote for that.
I'll second it.
And poor Neil's sitting there going, right, well, I'm out the seat then, aren't I? And hand over the deck chairs. Yeah, I'm out this deck chair. You take on this Titanic now, and I'll step aside, which was basically what Neil had to do. I know 3 people who weren't happy with it, but we had no say. We were outvoted. That's democracy. And as you said, you talked about the structure and the setup. The whole trust was set up on the lines of the cooperative society, which basically is like a trade union. It's that trade union rules. 1 member, 1 vote. You have a committee, you have an executive committee, you have rules that you have to follow. Forwarded, put forward, seconded, agreed, hands up, all that type of thing. And that's basically what you have to get on and put up with. And that's the rules. That's the rules. Whether we like them or not. Maybe we should have been a little bit more fastidious and studied the rule book a little bit more before we got to that point. But when you've got basically for 2 years what are, as Neil said, people that we didn't really know when we first went into the room 2 years earlier, but who were considered to be, friends around that table at that point, because we'd gone through so much and done so much. So it left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth anyway. I can't speak for Neil. Neil's big enough to speak for himself at that particular point,
So what was your feelings about that then, Neil? I mean, you've just mentioned 30 emails a night you found you were going through at that period of time. You put a hell of a lot of work in. And let's reiterate this, we've said this many times, this is done for free. This sadistic thing that we've chosen as a bit of an occupation over the last 30 years. None of us get paid for this. We do it for free. So what was your feeling?
You've just used a phrase there, though, and this sticks in my craw when I see people using this. People use it almost like a form of skin cheese. Well, you do better. I do this for free. And if you think you do better, you come and do it. Yeah, we do. We do it for free. We've put hours and hours and hours. I've said openly on this show many times before on this channel, setting up the trust and doing all the roadshows was what finished off my first bloody marriage.
Yeah.
It was actually mentioned in the bloody papers, for God's sakes.
If you said that earlier to people, there's a load of people who applied for it. If they knew that by getting that job they could get rid of the wife.
And so you do it for free. Sadly, I'm a cynical sod, and I constantly expect to be disappointed by people. Particularly
you dropped
people
out, though, didn't you, Neil? You dropped out. You accepted it and said, "Right, I'm out."
Not yet. Not yet.
No.
I see that. My understanding then was he just said, "Right, you have it." He just give the chair over.
Oh, yes.
It was a kangaroo court. You ran a kangaroo court in there where people would preempt before the wedding.
I know me battles to pick.
Aye.
And I'm big enough. You're big enough shoulders and broad enough, and my ego doesn't take that much of a bruising with things like that. I know the battles to fight and I know the battles to walk away from, and I'm not going to be upset by that. What I was upset by was by certain individuals who I thought, after spending 18 months, 2 years in the trenches with them, would have a little bit more backbone.
Aye, exactly.
But that's not my problem to live with. That's somebody else's. I can stand and look at myself in the mirror quite happily, thank you very much, and lie straight in my bed, and I don't have any foibles and things that hang around us. I was quite happy to stay involved with the committee. Ironically, then once they started the whole Yes We Can campaign, they wanted me to be doing more and more media because I'm a gobshite. Because you can give us a microphone with no script, and I can talk my way through it in a vaguely articulate fashion, which I was quite happy to do. However, as time goes by, you do start to think, hang on, A, I'm being used, and B, am I being set up for something here?
Yeah.
And so it did start to wear thin, but that's maybe something we'll go into in a little while.
So after you took over, the new guy takes over, what happens to the trust then?
This is just a commit. This is just
committee business, Keith. It just rumbles on because now you've got your constitution, and again, something else to be hidden behind. We have a constitution. We are legally recognised. We are the only elected process. Yeah. We are. But that's something you can hide behind as well as something that you can use for your power. And too many people who should know better are quite happy to dive behind that then, as they are now, in my opinion.
I mean, we did some devious things ourselves as a group.
Oh, for God's sakes!
Some really devious things. I mean, there was when we wanted to set up a supporters trust. The first thing Supporters Direct said to us is, you can't call it Newcastle United. And we said, why not? He said, because you've got to get permission from Newcastle United to use the name. So you might find that you might have to be called something like the Magpies Supporters Trust, or the Toffees Supporters Trust, the Thrussels, as it was for West Brom, if they had one, or I think Spurs eventually got the Tottenham Hotspur. I think, you know what I mean. So we had to go, because Neil mentioned it, because we had a relationship with, or in inverted commas, we
Steve, we did. I'd take Derek for a pint tomorrow if he walked in the door.
And I probably would myself, because he's a character, and all's fair in love and war, I suppose, is what I'm getting at. And it just today or yesterday or today, when we were this is July, by the way, we're talking about this type of thing and what's currently been going on with the current Supporters Trust, and the very fact that at some point in time they're going to have to talk to Mike Ashley if he's still there. So you've got to make sure that you've got to be prepared for every eventuality. We went to the club.
It's the age-old adage about be careful how you treat people when you're on the way up, because you sure as shit meet them on the way back down.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true. But what we did was we went to the club. We wrote to the club, and we put some ridiculous timeline on it, some ridiculous time scale, and just said basically, just to let you know, we're setting up a Supporters Trust, and it'll be for Newcastle United fans, and I'm sure you've got no objection to that. And they come back. We got the email back saying, yeah, do whatever you like, which meant that we just then took that as
just ambiguously used the fact that he said we could do what we wanted.
Those four words together, and we'll have Supporters Trust. And at the beginning of the paragraph, we had Newcastle United in it. So we'll meet them in the middle, and we'll take out those little few words that were in the gap, and we'll call ourselves Newcastle United Supporters Trust. And if they come back in 6 months' time, we'll say, well, we got this letter from you that told we could do it, But we also gambled on the fact that, they couldn't care less. They couldn't. We thought, the chances are it'll go straight over the top of their heads. They couldn't care less. And then once we had an agreement with, or it was stated by Supporters Director, once you got the name, that was it. You just show us that you've communicated, and they've come back and they're okay with you setting up a trust, and we'll go with it. So we kind of flammed it a little bit, and that wasn't me or Neil. That was the lad and last around the table. You know, we spent a little bit of time thinking. We thought, how devious can we be? What do we want? We want to be Newcastle United Supporters Trust. How can we do it? This is what supporters direct are telling we. How can we get round that? How far can we stretch it? How far can we sort of really push this envelope to get what we want? And do we actually need to state the very fact, you know, in words of one?
Where do you bend the rule until it breaks?
Yes.
And don't get to that point. And we did that on a number of things actually when we were setting everything up, because it was the most expedient way to do it.
That's right.
So once set up, once it's there, and you've got the trust, you've got the name and everything else. What do the fans feel now? What's happening now? What messages are you putting out?
Right. Well, at this point, very, very quickly, we got approached by a financial institution who said, we've been watching with interest, and now that you're a supporters trust, we think we can work with you on putting together a package that could potentially buy the football club off Mike Ashley.
That's what I was told, yeah.
So at that point, we went, right, what does that mean? What are we looking at here? The company was a company that was involved in pension schemes, and SIPs and such like. Luckily, we had Bill Corcoran on the board, who financial advisor, who understood a lot of this. The company was headed up by two ex-footballers. One was Graham Roberts, former Chelsea, Tottenham Hotspur, Glasgow Rangers. And the other one was a guy that we loved in inverted commas. So much. Such a, you know, he was revered on Tyneside as a footballer. David Speedy. You remember him? You remember him, Keith?
Well, very much, aye.
Right. And this group, fronted up by these two, came up and tried to sell to us the idea that there was the possibilities. Now, that's all well and good. I mean, you hear that on the top level, and as most supporters in that situation, you're going to go, wow, you know, £80 million. We could raise £80 million. We could get Mike Ashley out. He's wanting to go. At the same time, there was a big financial house, or a big house in Newcastle, just a stone's throw from St James's Park, full of financial advisors, who we contacted us one day, and they said, we understand, we've heard on the grapevine that you might be putting a scheme together to buy the football club, the supporter scheme. Well, we didn't at the time. But naturally, the first thing you're going to say is, that is part of our plan, because you want to know what they're going to say. Why have they come? They must have something. And this particular house said, the finance house said, you know what, we could help you buy it. We could help the fans buy the football club. We could probably get it you for 60 million. But to get it for 60 million, your job as supporters, so for us to bring the financial people in who will do the work and who will basically take over the football club, but involve you in some way, shape or form, you will have to convince the fans that not a single fan goes into St James's Park for the next 8 games. And we went, nah, never going to happen. Not going to happen. There is no way that we are going to stand up and say, don't go in for 8 or 9 games, boycott the club, destroy the whole embers, just so that some rich financiers can step in and take the football club for what they said was 60 million. They wanted us to devalue the brand so much that they could pick it off. And we thought, you know what? We'll be kicked into touch here. We'll get, the fans will get nothing. Yeah. That was very much right around the table, you know, for once 10 out of 10, you know. But what we saw was an opportunity to put a campaign together that could explore the possibilities of fan ownership in a small, medium, or large way, because that's what supporters trusts do, apparently.
But this is also where it started to get a little bit weird.
Yes.
A bit like now, when we tell people from the conversations we've had inside the club that they're getting in excess of occasionally 90 inquiries a month. That's genuine what we're told.
Yeah.
So us then as an embryonic trust suddenly had all sorts of chances appearing, saying they could help her buy the club. The best one for me was Peter Lee.
Yes.
Who initially, when the email came in and I got handed around, I'm like, this is somebody taking the piss, man. It's Peter Lee. Oh yeah. And no, he was a real person, and he came.
I thought it was Peters and Lee.
Yeah, he came up and spoke to her, and he was more random than a box of bloody rainbow-coloured frogs. I mean, just out there, but passionately and determined that he could help us buy the football club as supporters, and he had a plan. And it involved this and it involved that, and then as things evolved, then suddenly it genuinely gained momentum, and everybody became sort of, the ears were pricking up, because so many people who had far more credibility were saying, "Yeah, this could work," and that was where that next little surge came from, wasn't it, Steve?
That's
really
right.
was,
yeah.
It gained a bit of momentum.
That's right. And that's why we set up the Yes We Can campaign, because it was, yes, you know what? If anyone can do it, because we had all of these people turning up saying that they could buy the football club. And we wondered, where are the supporters going to be left here? Are the supporters going to be left on the shelf? Are we going to be left in the gutter again? Are we just going to get another Mike Ashley? But what we also saw was the deterioration of the football club at this particular point. You know, the club was not just going into itself. It was basically internally combusting. All of the things that a football club, and it's very similar, I suppose, in some respects now. We felt as though that there was so much that the club should have been doing. You know, it didn't have a player of the season. It didn't have anything
anything.
Community. It
didn't have anything in terms of fan input that any normal functional club.
When's this, Steve? What for the fans watching this show? When was this happening? Like, relate that to time.
2010, Neil?
2010, yeah.
2010.
So it's on 3 years in Ashley's reign, roughly.
And sitting talking this through with Steve, with Bill, with Colin, was what got me fully re-engaged again. And particularly when people were saying, well, can you go and do this interview with the Chronicle? Can you do this? That got me fully engaged again, I've got to say. Because the bigger picture was, well, we could have a vehicle here if it's thought through and if it's done well. And I remember the eventual vehicle, I've alluded to this before. I remember sitting with you and Bill for about 3 hours in the Irish Centre, with Bill trying to explain how this vehicle worked to me.
Yeah.
And the only thing I can relate it to was Father Ted and Father Dougal in the caravan with the cows. No, this one's big and that one's far away, and I'm going, no, you're gonna have to tell us again, Bill.
Right.
It was just trying to, because anybody who knows us will tell you, if you give me money in my pocket, I'll spend it. I'm not financially savvy, and so to be given something that's sort of exceptionally financially savvy and a wee bit complicated was a bit like teaching Neanderthals how to make fire. You know, it was just like, God, mind blown. But it certainly got me re-engaged and passionate about the role that the trust could have in this.
But what we did,
is gain momentum, you know.
Yeah, what we did with the Yes We Can campaign, however, wrapped around eventually saying that the fans would have to have involvement in the football club, no matter who owned it, whether the fans managed to get a share in it, whether it was a big multi-million-dollar pension fund that dipped into it, whether it was 40,000 fans putting, pension fund money in, or convincing whether we even tried tying in Weir pension funds and people like that. There was all sorts of we looked at all sorts of different ways, different vehicles for bringing finance to buy a football club. But
and the challenge was making sure it wasn't a collective investment scheme and therefore illegal. Exactly. And that was the biggest thing to get around.
That's right. But what we said, underpinning all of that, there had to be something in place that would immediately involve the supporters. And we saw the Yes We Can campaign as that, very much that, at least I did. I drafted an awful lot of it. I threw a lot of work into it. And what we were picking up all of the things that the football club had thrown away or had never involved themselves in since Mike Ashley took over. The Hall of Fame. We said, you know what, we'll create a Hall of Fame and we'll stick it in, and we'll have an event every month where we'll bring a player in, and we'll have this Hall of Fame, and we'll have a corridor, and we'll have it anywhere. It'll be a corridor in the city council if necessary, or it'll be in the Irish Centre, or it'll be in the Labour Club, or it'll be in what's now the Leazes Club. It'll be somewhere where we'll get a player, and we'll all as fans acknowledge that player for what he's done for the football club, because Newcastle United weren't doing it. Then we said we would do a junior club. It was like, we'd had the junior Magpies that had disappeared. And we said, we'll do something that brings that. We'll run junior competitions.
We did a junior football competition, didn't we?
We ran junior football.
That was massively well attended.
Absolutely.
Really well attended.
We ran our own five-a-side, local five-a-side competition over a bank holiday. We looked at a Player of the Season award, not just the award, because we said that there was nothing like that. We grasped the imagination of people like the Chronicle on that type of thing, because they went, yes, this is what fans do. Fans as an organisation acknowledge the players that play for the football club every season. And the Chronicle hadn't even twigged on it as the main, and the Journal, the main national print people that they didn't even run a Player of the Year or a Player of the Year competition and stuff like that. So we thought, you put all that structure around, but we're also doing it with a thought that if the football club can be bought, we have to have a say in what that owner is going to bring, and what they can do, and whether we can have a say in that. It might not be viable for us to raise the money to be part of it, but that was the thinking at that particular time. And we actually produced in a big fanfare at the Civic Centre, actually, with all the press around, and we introduced the Yes We Can campaign, and it was very much a campaign. It was something that we wanted the members to get behind, and to support and to understand, and again, because we hadn't been discussing much before, we wanted to say, yes, we can run our football club. Members, you tell us, if we do this, can we run it that way? Should we run it that way? But it was very much informative in saying, we pull a structure together. If we've got the firm foundations there that would make it happen, that would facilitate it, would you as members back it to make it happen? And that was what, and we wanted to say, yes, we can do it. Can we all do it? That was the theme, if you like, that we were trying to get over. At least that's the way that I saw it, and the way that many others saw it at the time. We put a lot of effort in.
How many members, Steve, would you have at the time?
Sorry?
How many members would you have in the trust at the time?
Oh, it was probably, I would say, by this point, fully paid up members.
£10 members, that's what they were.
I think there was about 8,000.
So you're like 80 grand
in
fees.
Yeah.
And it's just compare that to today. You got 14,000 members at £3, so that's like 40 grand. So by changing from £10 to £3, your revenue's halved. Yeah, so what year would this be? Yes, You Can would be what, 2012?
No, 2010. This was 2010.
2010.
What happens between then and that? Like, what's the gap in between? Because when did you not stop doing it?
Well, when for me, that you're leaving with a different place here.
Yeah.
For me,
we've established how we've gone from NUSC to NUST.
Yeah.
We've established that Neil was a chairman and then was unceremonially removed, but by political means, shall we say. So now we're really at this stage where things are starting to change, and not for the better, I guess, Steve.
I think this is where things started to, I would say, unravel.
Sorry, I brought this up.
Yeah, no.
Well, we said we've only got 2 hours. It's very difficult to cram.
Keith, it's a great point to segue in now, because everybody knows what happened with Yes We Can.
Unfortunately, me and Keith, as I said right at the start, we're an hour in already. We're very much, although we've been involved to a degree in this, we're very much sitting at ringside watching things go on. Whereas, Steve and Neil were in the ring. So that's the way to describe it. So back to you, Steve. It's why I said you're probably the best to lead it. But Keith, keep interjecting. I'll probably sit out more.
I will, because I'm trying to get to where it was and what it got to. That's what I'm trying to.
Right.
That's the whole point of today.
We didn't stay. So there's the point where we left. Why did we leave? What? We were no longer part of it. I mean, just to finish off where we were established. This is in the World Cup of 2010, June. There was the Supporters Direct, Football Supporters Federation. They did a joint AGM, and by this point, what we had done in such a short period of time was starting to get noticed nationally. Yeah. And Supporters Direct was so impressed, and the FSF was so impressed, that the FSF invited three of us down to the AGM. We watched that debacle of a game on the Saturday in a hotel in London, where I think it was, I forget who, was it Rob Green possibly in goal, where he dived and the ball went under him, or it was Carson or somebody like that, I can't remember who. I think we were playing America. It was I think we were playing the USA. Anyway, the following day I had done a presentation. I asked to do a presentation, 25-30-minute presentation to the other supporters trusts. So I created this little PowerPoint presentation. But basically, what they were all interested in was the battle that we were having with Mike Ashley, the battle that we'd had with the club, the loss of Keegan, etc., which we could talk about till the cows come home, and you could talk about it 10 times better than me as well, I'm sure, Keith. But we did. This is where the standing was at that particular time. So we did this presentation, and I got taken to one side by some Glasgow Rangers, ironically, and said, would you fancy coming up and doing exactly the same with our AGM? We have an AGM. We were playing Glasgow Rangers in the summer in a pre-season friendly. And he said, if you come up that weekend, we'll jig our AGM around that. You come up and, go to the match as you would. And then if you stay overnight, then you can come back and you can do your presentation. We'd love the fans to hear this, because this is kind of a warning shot. They had nothing to do with Mike Ashley at the time. It was quite ironic that they ended up getting dumped in the manner that they did, but and having Mike Ashley on their lap and all the angst that was created. But the reason I'm saying it is because the previous year it had been the supporters liaison officer and team from Barcelona who had done the talk in Glasgow Rangers. And the following year, they were asking fans of Newcastle United to do the talk to their membership. So that was a standing we got. This is the sort of respect that had been gained, if you like, by NUST to all the work that they've done. So that kind of moves that away. Now we'll talk about what happened next, as you rightly asked.
What year is this?
We're
still 2010, mate.
Still 2010.
We're into the September, October 2010. And somebody contacted us and said they were having a few problems that they wanted to air with some of the committee. How do I put this over, Steve, do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean,
Honestly.
I'm more than happy to say it because it was me, and ultimately with NUST, there was an advertising campaign which was aimed at the supporters to try and recruit members, and various campaigns that would take place. That was often the way that they would contact the fanzines, and at the time there was a plethora of fanzines. There was True Faith, there was the Mag, of course, and there was mine, which went through a variety of names. It started as the Mighty Quinn and then became the Number 9, and then we ended up with Toon Talk. So I had 3 fanzines. I also did a regional magazine called Players Inc. But this particular magazine that we were doing at the time was Toon Talk. We'd made a return to the fanzine lifestyle, and it was a really nice magazine. Loved it. We had sponsors, and the magazine sales were okay. Of course, that ruffles feathers. Steve Wraith's back on the scene. What can we do to get rid of him? Was often the chitter chatter in bars around Newcastle, and as far as the fanzine was concerned. But I just cracked on.
Steve, at this point, we were the trust were aware of your fanzine, and I was on the committee that was trying to keep the part of the committee that was trying to liaise with and publicity and such, like as Neil was, and I was tasked with talking to you. And one of the things you came to me and said was, "I'll offer you a couple of pages in the fanzine. Every time I put a fanzine out, you can do an NUST piece. That's what you offered us." And I was chuffed to bits, because this meant yet another publication that was giving us an opportunity to get the message out, perhaps to people who weren't buying any of the other fanzines. It might have been yours might have been aimed at a slightly different clientele or a slightly different readership, or whatever words you want to use. So you asked me if the trust would be interested, and I said I'll take it, and yeah, I'll put that forward. That was when we hit a wall.
The juicy stuff.
That was when it was pointed out that Toon Talk had an advert in it, or used an image that some people felt was sexist, and it was the last had a sprayed top. It was like a football top, body painted top.
Yeah.
And it was decided not by the committee, but it was decided by certain people who had the
fanzines.
Certain people people who had a fanzine that were involved, but also people within that echelon who had kicked Mitch off, if you like. People in that little clique decided that it wasn't right to have that particular being associated with that sort of image, and if go back and say to Steve Wraith, if he's willing to take the image down, we might be interested. So Steve being Steve, he came back and went, hang on a minute, there's other fanzines advertise topless stripper bars in town. They advertise for your eyes only. They advertise the vaults and idols and stuff like that. And they're actually promoting the idea of gun. Yet I've got this photograph or this image of a girl with body paint that doesn't show anything other than she's wearing a blue kit or a red kit or whatever it was. And he went, I'm not very happy with that. And I went, well, I'm sorry, but that's what they've come at. I'm just reporting back, which is what I did. But
you see,
we felt as though it was hypocrisy. And that was another little chip that was starting to be created, that was breaking up the core, if you like, of the board, because we then had division. And we're going, well, why have you lot decided that can happen for that fanzine, but it can't happen for that fanzine? That's not.
And it's all tied in with me being marginalised as well. I've known Steve a long time. I've had a good relationship with Steve a long time. He's a mate. We disagree on a number of different things, but he's a mate. And I've always wanted to get him involved with stuff. And he's always said to me, no, Mitch, I'm too Marmite. I'll cause more problems with you somewhere down the lane just because it's me. And I think one of the reasons that I was marginalised because people know I get on with everybody, and I don't have an agenda. I want everybody who I think is useful to galvanise the fan base on a same party line. And I didn't care about your fanzines, even though I was writing for one of those fanzines. And I didn't care about that. It was about, well, hang on, but he can do a job here.
What was important here was that you were actually having asked and being told, no, I'm Marmite, I don't want to create problems for you. This was an opportunity where Steve actually came to us and said, I actually want to help the trust. I've got something here. I've got a magazine, and I now want to really, really give up, 2 pages where, that might have been 2 pages. You could put more adverts on. Maybe if you'd been lucky, you might have had an advert for Your Eyes Only, Steve, that you might have got some money for. I don't know. But this was an opportunity to get the message even further. Another fanzine. So this was unity. This was all the fanzines coming on board. Everybody was then part of, or at least that's what we were hoping we're getting. But we got the knockback. More importantly, Steve got the knockback. But more importantly, we got the knockback because it was kind of a slight. I took it as a slight to us. You're not switched on enough. You don't realise. You should have realised that. And this is when you suddenly realised what fan. This was the first time you realised what fan politics was all about.
This is me. You were saying about how I eventually walked away, Keith. At this point, my missus was pregnant and very poorly. Yeah, very poorly. And I was effectively running 3 businesses. And I just didn't need any more shit. And it got the
and 2 kids.
Aye, yeah, people who knows will know this. I went from, single bloke to stepdad to dad in a very short period of time, and my learning curve was like that, and I guess in some ways still is. You look at kind of like the time you're dedicating to something and where you should be, and it was just time to say, nah, enough of this, enough of the games.
Yeah, I don't want to play. What happened here, Mitch? Though, what happened here was this is where the rule book appeared out of nowhere.
Yes,
this is where the secretary, who had been brought in, wasn't voted in. This was a secretary who had been brought in. To take the part of a proper secretary, brought in by the chair. This is where the rule book appeared, because Mitch was looking after the ill wife, went through a really, really horrendous time, pregnancy, trying to look after 2 little kids that he'd never looked after before. If the truth be known, he would be the last person you would leave with 2 little kids. And he knows where I'm coming from there. And he missed a couple of meetings. He missed 3 meetings.
Let's just say one of the incidents involved a cricket ball going through a sunroof on a car.
But this was the point where the rule book said, and when Mitch commented about what was going on, he was told, I've got the emails, so I can relate this as day as night, white as black, whatever you want to say, whatever phraseology you use, I don't know. But he was told when he raised the query and raised the point, he was told, well, you should have been at the meeting. You can't suddenly decide now that you're going to complain after the event. You should have been at the meeting. You weren't at the last 3 meetings. In fact, I think you've missed 4 now. And the rule book says that, really, you should not be on the committee anymore because you've missed 4 meetings. And it was like, wow.
Did he go at that point? Did Mitch go at this point?
This is the point where Mitch went.
And did you stay?
Yes.
Right. And what year is this? Bill
Corcoran stayed.
What year is this?
It's tail end of 2010 still.
It was a hectic
big year. There was
also the issue which again, I discovered, and it's a perfect time to interject on this, but there was also the discovery of the fact that certain fanzines were invoicing for the adverts to go into the magazines.
I heard this,
Now, I personally had given my space for free to Steve on the understanding that, you know, I was giving them for free. However, what I did say to Steve was, if there is a payment that other fanzines are getting, then I want the same payment as the other fanzines. And Steve, in his due diligence in going backwards and forwards, then discovers that not only are they trying to stop me from advertising the trust due to this ruling of having a scantily clad woman in the fanzine, despite there being other scantily clad women in other fanzines, but now they're getting paid and I'm not. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And I was furious about that, Keith, because that was a point of principle. Not only are they trying to shaft us on that, but now I find out that my generosity in offering free advertisement space is now being thrown back in my face doubly because they're putting in a big invoice as well. So I was furious, and you know, luckily Steve Hasty didn't get it in the neck from me because I liked Steve straight away. I trusted. Well, not to the degree of blaming him, but you know, you were the one who had to deal with the conversations with me, and I wasn't very happy.
Yes.
What happens next then?
Sorry, Keith, go on.
What happens next then?
Well, what happens next is that Steve says, I want this brought up formally.
Yeah.
So I went, like, okay. So I thought, well, the only route you can take is that you can't take it to the committee.
Yeah.
You can't take it to the board. You take it to the secretary. So I took it to the secretary, who said he would investigate naturally, and came back and said I was talking rubbish, basically. And I was like, oh, right, okay. I went back to Steve and told him that, you know, the secretary reckons that that's not the case. He's checked up, he's done his work, and that's not the case, Steve. So, but Steve was still annoyed. Naturally, he felt hard done to. He felt badly done to. I was the only one there that knew this, other than the secretary. I wasn't getting any backing. I was on my own, if you like. And so I took it upon myself to speak to another committee member, someone who had only just joined the committee at the election, but someone who was on one of the subgroups that I was involved in. Yeah. So he knew that there was something up with us. So he contacted me and asked me what the problem was, and I texted him and told him that there was an issue. Explained what I thought the issue was. I think there was another issue to do with Steve and the fanzine anyway, with distribution and such like. And I didn't know that particular person would then immediately send the text messages to
other people.
And basically, that created an absolute stink. That created an absolute pile-on.
Just putting the truth out.
Well, just confidentially trying to get something off your chest, trying to get some of the weight taken away from what you were encountering with the secretary and what you were encountering with Steve. You know, because I was stuck in the middle. I had two sides of it. I had Steve on one side, I had the secretary on the other. And the secretary had said he'd done his inquiry. Steve wasn't happy with the outcome, naturally. And I just felt as though I needed to share the burden, if you like, with someone who was on this particular committee. I didn't think that person would then go and divulge everything that I was feeling and everything that I was saying, but they did.
What happened?
It turned out, Keith, as well, that I was trying to get distribution with a distributor for my fanzine with a well-known newspaper, shall we say, in the northeast, only to find out that somebody who was involved within the trust and also had an interest in another fanzine was putting the block on it with his contact at the Chronicle. Unbelievable. The
impact of which was that, as you put it, Steve, if you couldn't get the distribution that you wanted, that everybody else was getting, you were only able to get distribution with a national store.
Yeah.
And that national store, from what you told me, said that if your fanzine, if they took, say, 1,000 copies of your fanzine could have 990 of them in Bishop Auckland and 10 in Newcastle. You had no say of where it was going to go, as opposed to the one with the well-known newspaper, whereby if you had a distribution with them, wherever their newspaper went, the fanzine would go.
Yeah, and I'm not going to embarrass the guy and mention him, but ultimately he basically spoke to me. I had an exchange of emails, and he said he would be more than happy for me to be transported with the Evening Chronicle within the city centre. But unfortunately, the person within the trust put a block on that, and it was a deliberate ploy because they were involved with another fanzine. And I was flabbergasted that had happened. I really was. It was, for me, it was corrupt. It was, I didn't even see that as business. It wasn't a fair playing field. I was very upset, and especially after the fact that I'd reached out to the trust and given them an opportunity to, have free advertisement within my pages, only to then find out that the other fanzine was actually getting paid. It just became a mess. This is the big reason why there has been so much fallout between lots of people subsequently from then.
Yeah, and I was piggy in the middle. I became the victim here, the victim of my own naivety, I suppose, in one respect. But I was told by I was approached, and I was threatened that I was trying to damage other people's businesses, and I was going to get sued. I was going to be taken to court. I was told I had to put a formal apology forward. All that type of thing. And then I was then approached and I was told by the secretary that the committee had been informed of what I'd done, and they felt it was a full inquiry was required, and I was formally suspended from the board. That was around about the November of 2010. There was then a whole raft of emails and correspondence between myself and the secretary, which said that having listened to all parties, he felt as though there was a case for us to answer, and that I would have to face a
shooting committee.
I'd have to face the committee.
Kangaroo court.
I'd have to put my point of view forward. I'd have to explain my actions. And I don't think I've done anything wrong other than talk to another committee member. I had to explain my actions and explain why I was trying to damage the good name of committee members as businesses, and the committee in the kind of in football jargon, bringing the club into disrepute, I suppose, for want of a coin and a phrase. By this point, I was laid up. Whether it was stress related or what, I don't know. But I did some real damage to me back. I damaged a disc, and I was laid up for all the way through December. I was off work, and I was laid up, and I could hardly move. And all the time, I was getting told I had to attend a meeting. I couldn't get out the living room. I was sleeping on the settee. I could hardly get up. I was absolutely crippled. And I just kept getting badgered. Right, well, we need to know, right, you've got to come then. You've got to come 4th of December, 11th of December, so on and so forth. to the point where I actually I had rafts of correspondence between myself and Supporters Direct at this point, and I was saying to Supporters Direct, look, can I send somebody on my place? I'll do a written deposition. No, it's got to be up front. You've got to be there. Well, can I not send someone on my behalf? I've got legal representation. I found out that the trust was spending money on legal advice against us. You know, they were using a team of solicitors that that Supporters Direct would nominate. You know, they're sort of like, there was like a team of solicitors, a company that all the Supporters Direct provided supporters trusts. And I found out that this company, they were taking advice on what to do about me. And I was expected to then spend money on a solicitor at this point in time. This is how serious it was getting.
And it's also a really good use of members' money to persecute the board member, isn't it? Really.
Yeah. So I'm right up against it here, right? So I said, look, I'll represent myself. I was getting legal advice from a good friend, former member of the trust, who was giving me advice and guidance on what to say and what not to say. Free, pro bono, whatever the phrases that you want to use. But okay. Sorry about that. So I was getting advice. I was getting guidance.
That wasn't solicitor there, was it?
No. No.
Next best thing.
Because it's come with a big letter. 12 years later.
So what happens when you appear, or what happens when you?
Well, what happened was I said, look, I cannot. What's the hurry? What is the urgency about this? Why do we have to do this now? I'm laid up. I cannot move. You keep constantly saying we've got to have this done. We've got to have this out in the open. We've got, you're time bonding us all the way through. And the secretary was, well, that's your problem. That was the attitude that I was getting in the correspondence. So much so that, and it's funny because we've talked in the past about NCSL and about how you got a letter from the Premier League just before Christmas at some ridiculous time of the day or night, just to ruin your Christmas. Well, that happened exactly to me. I got told that on the I think it was like the 23rd or 24th of December.
It was 23rd, Steve, because you sent me an email.
Mine was the 23rd, 4:45.
Yeah, well, this was 11 o'clock at night, telling me that that they'd, in my absence, that they had found that I had brought the committee into dispute, or the organisation into dispute, or whatever the phrase they used, and it had been decided that I was forthwith suspended formally for 4 months. I had 2 weeks in which to appeal, which took me up until like the new year. Start the new year, and then after that, if I didn't appeal, because I hadn't appeared, as far as they were concerned, that was it. And so I was basically, what happened then was your emails were cut off. You were no longer in correspondence and you were basically sent to Coventry for 4 months. And then after 4 months, you get a lovely email. All of a sudden, your emails are back up and running. You get a lovely email saying, just let you know your suspension's up now and you're back in. Just like that.
I don't know. And what do you say? No chance.
Exactly. No chance. That's it. Why would I want to? Why would I want
GFY?
Yeah.
I mean, by this point as well, Bill Corcoran had resigned.
Mitch is out. Mitch is out as well.
Bill Corcoran had resigned. Bill Corcoran had asked them about some. Asked to see the financials of the organisation as part of his due diligence or part of his work that he does, financial advice.
Let's just touch on something you've not mentioned either.
Okay.
About the questionable individual that was brought in to the Yes We Can campaign that I got asked loads of questions retrospectively about by my ex-wife.
Yes.
Who is a very high-powered auditor in the Northeast, because she was investigating the company that individual worked for. And she'd put two and two together, and I got the most random email out of the blue saying, look, you don't want this email off me, but I want to talk to you. And so quite right, Bill wanted to look at everything because it was a mess. It was more than a mess. The word clusterfuck springs to mind.
So is this a mess because of the monies they've got in that they're not accounting for it, or is this something else? Because as a football fan,
the problem is, Keith, the more you knew, the less you understood.
right?
And I'm not going to sit here and chuck allegations of financial impropriety anyway. But the fact that they were resistant to letting anybody look at that in terms of due diligence always raises a red flag, even if nothing's improper. The fact that somebody's prepared to say, nah, can't do that, it's not a good look. It's just not a good look.
But I mean, I dropped out. I stopped paying me 10 and dropped out, but I heard someone went to jail. So is that all to do with it?
Well, look, you can easily find that on the Northern Echo website. It's a big case. You don't need to look very far to find it. But if we're talking a few years later, Paul Brown King, who Steve mentioned earlier, basically was sent to jail. He was 64 at the time. He was jailed at court April 2019. He admitted two fraud charges, abusing his position of trust, overseeing the accounts of Bullion Hall Community Resource Centre in Chesterley Street and Mental Health North East in nearby Berkeley. The court heard he transferred £53,655 of the Hall's fund into his own account between 2012 and 2017. He was caught out, of course, when he made out the cheque for £11,269 from the mental health charity to try to buy time and cover his tracks for some of the funds he'd taken from the Bullion Hall. So, huge case. You can Google Paul Brown King. You will find it on the website of the Northern Echo. But yeah, that was the big...
How's he connected to the trust then?
What position did he hold, Steve?
Treasurer.
Wow.
Right.
Now... You've been on the trust, Neil's been on the trust, and I was on briefly for a year to help them try and boost their numbers. I certainly wasn't aware of this until you told me about it. And I was, then pointed in the direction by numerous people about it. Has this ever been declared by the trust? Anyone's knowledge? Has it ever been put out there?
Not to my knowledge.
It wasn't to my knowledge when I was part of the committee for a year. It's not something that which would even have crossed my mind because I wasn't aware of it then. However, I've never seen this put out there. Would it not be good practice? And I mean, Keith, I'll come to you on this. I mean, you're somebody who deals with finances all the time. Is this something that should have been put out there?
Legally, if you've got a funds membership and you're gaining revenue and your treasurer goes to jail for anything to do with financial fraud, there's a duty of care on that company then to immediately do an audit on all the revenue that's come into that business, what's gone out. And the least you would do is a full due diligence exercise with a third party involved, where you put an auditor in place to go and trace your monies. So I guess obviously,
I guess basically, Steve, you'd gone by then. Neil was well gone by then. I hadn't entered into the fray by then as part of the trust when he was arrested. So when they were fully aware of it, I guess whoever was on the committee at that time and whoever was chair at that time maybe should have, with hindsight, and we're all very good with hindsight, maybe should have made the decision to go to committee and make that public. I guess it would be available in the minutes if that was discussed.
Yeah, I don't know, Steve. I think if obviously you've got it, you've been in a situation in that where the treasurer has been arrested and there's an ongoing court case. So at that point, I would imagine you wouldn't go to your membership, or you wouldn't, as a committee, do anything other than do some backtracking and see exactly whether you've been covered as well, whether you've been hit, because you'd want to satisfy yourselves.
Yeah.
But once the case is over, I think you probably have a duty to inform your membership.
Yes.
And you would also, at that point, I would have expected that you would have been able to report that you've gone back across the entire period of time when the person was holding the purse strings or checkbook or credit card or whatever it was, to satisfy yourself and satisfy you as a committee that members' finances have not been impacted by any of that. And I would have hoped that that has happened. I'm not a member anymore. Obviously, I'm hardly going to be part of an organisation that's treated it or did treat us in the way it did. I've had conversations with subsequently over the last, well, even recently, where the topic's been brought up by committee members, where I've described it as basically the elephant in the room. If they're running a pledge scheme and they're taking members' money, they're asking for people to pledge, and I've got no problem with the pledge, by the way. But what I'm saying is, no, you have to be whiter than white, and you have to have everything in place. And I'm sure that I'm almost certain that the pledge scheme's been set up, judging by the people who are the
trustees.
Trustee or governor or whatever it is that they're overseeing it to make sure that nothing can come out. I'm sure everything's above board on that, but that's not the Supporters Trust's money. That is money set aside under something called Pledge 1892 from a trust themselves, where the trust have access to the cash. The members fit monies that the members pay in as subs or membership money or whatever you want to call it. That's the area that you would want to make sure that you are white, and you would go back as far as that person was holding it. And I don't know whether they did, but
my biggest problem here, because I know Paul Bromking, he was on the committee when we won the committee.
And consider him a very decent lad and a good friend, and a hard-working, diligent chap. You know,
always lend you a few quid. Joke.
No, I'm not. I'm thinking when he sees a decent lad, I'm thinking like, I would like to play cards with him.
Well, but you know what I mean.
Look, Keith, I'll tell you something. I've got a good mate who I love to bits, who has done time for something, of that ilk, and to walk a day in his shoes to get him to the point where he had to do something like that. You don't know which path you're going to take in that situation. So I think you've got to put a little bit of perspective on that.
He's certainly. I'm sorry. Listen, it's out there. It's in the public domain. Everyone can read about it.
Biggest issue with this is I can find you on social media a written quote by a subsequent chair saying, when I took over, we didn't have a website and we didn't have access to the bank accounts. Now, when I left as chair and when I left the trust, we had all of that and more. So what happened in that interim period, and why are you making a statement like that when you're fully aware about what's happening to a former treasurer?
Yeah.
Why then have the members, because it's the members they're answerable to. They're not answerable to me. I'm not a member anymore. Haven't been for a long time. And everybody after the day knows why. But you're answerable to your members. Why haven't the members had an email, at least, saying this has happened, we're investigating, we're cooperating, and this is what we've found, perhaps in a subsequent email later on. Mm-hmm. There's been, to my knowledge, none of that. That's my problem. Because you can't say, well, I didn't have access to the bank accounts and I didn't have a website. You're just doing that with it.
But as a punter and a fan, it seems as though Steve Hasty gets a 6-month investigation, 4 months suspended for saying one of our suppliers, a fanzine, don't get the same deal as one of the committee's fanzines. It seems as though he gets investigated for that and gets sent to Coventry, even though he's ill.
Yeah.
and they make quite damning comments to somebody who'd helped set this up. And I was at them roadshows, and I was there when like Sir Colin Whittle and Steve Yates were asking me to do print and help them any which way I can. But he gets that treatment, and then a bloke goes to jail for misappropriating funds, and they don't seem to spend that 3, 4, 6 months investigating it. They investigated Steve Hasty to see if he's
one
worthy.
knows what they've done because they've never said to anybody, members, outside world, anything. Yet so many people know that the elephant in the room it's not just an elephant in the room, it's a bloody troop of the buggers sitting down in the corner waving bloody flags with their trunks saying, who's done something about this and what have you done? To just wash your hands of it and almost continue to ignore it and hide it under a blanket is absolutely, in my opinion, ludicrous.
But you're not saying, Mitch, you're not saying that they spent more time and money with solicitors investigate whether Steve Hasty had damaged the name of the committee members than you're saying.
I don't know, but to you or I looking from the outside in, it certainly looks like it, doesn't it?
But have they spent the same money with solicitors, auditors investigating the chairman misappropriating funds? That's what I'm saying.
Treasurer.
I tell you what surprised me tonight. I tell you what surprised me tonight is the monies, because I remember paying me tenner, the Collins days, and then dropping out when the reason I said to Colin I was dropping out was because I didn't get the whole purpose. I didn't get how we took them roadshows into the solution and how that was put forward, what they sold to me, and I thought I just don't get this buying into the club, like which I know you were investigating.
Because once somebody took over as chair who felt that he did not need to consult the members
anymore. I know that.
All of that went out of the window.
And I saw emails
every single bit of it. I've
seen emails to that effect. And when they didn't need to talk to the members no more, I thought, what's the point of me being a member? But so why then? So you all drop out. Bill Cochran's dropped out this stage. Like, you would legally have to say, well, we're collecting monies in on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. You'd have to legally say we've investigated our treasurer. You would have to do that.
You got to remember though that they might not have known about the treasurer situation until he was arrested, and then once he's arrested, they're then in a legal process. Now, it could be that they lost control of their bank account and access to it, and subsequently, because you haven't got access to your bank account, maybe you haven't got access to pay for your website or something like that. I don't know. I'm
the speculation. That's pure speculation. But I tell you what, Steve, that's rather concerning.
Yes, but at that point, buried their head in the sand, waiting for the court case to be over, or did they do their own investigating, and are they still investigating?
All right. So as a member today, then Steve, because you've give like benefit the doubt. So as a member today, and when let's suppose they got the bank accounts took off them, that the day they get handed back, every member needs to know that they investigated to see whether they lost any funds or whether any monies were misappropriated. You have to, once you've got it back, Steve, the excuses is gone, and you've got to then do due diligence on your treasurer with an auditor. In the same way they found funds to assess you, they found funds to pay solicitors to question you. They had to find auditors to question the treasurer.
Yeah, I mean, look, what I don't want to do is get caught up in this isn't about hammering NUST, but this had to come out in essence. It's been, I've seen, and listen, we aren't the people to break this. Anyone who's on Twitter, especially, will have seen this being brought up by a couple of accounts in the last 12 months. I think us bringing it up and just giving a bit of clarity on it is very important because we know exactly what happened. And as I say, Google that particular article on the Northern Echo. What I read out is there for everybody to see. We don't know. All I would like to know is, in my view, is it would have been nice for a bit of clarity as a member of the trust to have been told about that And certainly when I was on the board, it would have been nice to have been made aware of it. But look, it hasn't. They chose to do it in that particular way, and why they chose to do that, whoever made those decisions will live by those decisions.
Yeah, I appreciate as well that we've now got a totally different board. We've got people who had an election just over a year ago, so there are people on the trust board now who perhaps could sit there and say they know nothing about what's gone on in the past regarding the treasurer. But I've spoken to three of them. I've spoken to three current board members where I've brought this subject up because they have asked me what my problem is with the trust. I've explained what my problem was, in inverted commas, that, because all the way through the last 10 or 11 years, I've never gone out of my way to criticize or to attack or to go on the defense in any way, shape, or form.
Come off it. Let's give you the credit you're due here. When the trust were chucked off the fans forum, the person that fought the hardest to get them back on was you.
Yeah,
and I know that, and I don't know, and I'm not saying this because I'm your mate.
I know.
I'm saying this because black and white. Go and look at the bloody minutes. You were the one that fought hardest to get them back on, in spite of everything that had happened. And yet they'll still chuck bombs at you. They're still chucking shite at you that you don't deserve. Painting a certain picture, which is utterly unfair. And using our friendship with Steve against you, which is rubbish. Absolutely rubbish. And so people have got to take this whole concept into perspective, that you and I still remain passionate about the trust, still think a lot of the people involved in it now. There's some really good people on there who really need to be given the lead to just go and do the good stuff. But when they get involved in this defensive whataboutism that just serves nothing but to perpetuate arguments and division, it's not right.
I think what this does,
and it's useless.
I think what this does is certainly clear up the reasoning behind some of the divide amongst our fan base, which involves me, NUST, and some of the fanzines. And unfortunately, that has gone on, as we know, since the early 2010s, and that's something which is now dragged on into the modern era, despite the change in circumstances, despite me being on the trust board at one point for a year, they thanked me for what I did by launching a campaign with ex-players to increase the membership at the right time. And, but ultimately, we aren't against the trust. And I think that's another thing that shone through in the show tonight. We aren't against the trust, never, not at all. You guys set the thing up. Or help set the thing up and facilitate it with other people. But it's, just getting back, because I'm conscious of the fact we're dragging into, the third hour here. We've done 2 hours already, and that's flown over. But the final separation, Steve, you obviously walked away, and Neil walked away, and Bill walked away.
Yeah.
It must have been disappointing after setting up NUST to have to do that.
It was very disappointing. You felt as though that there'd been a big chunk of the previous sort of 3 years had been wasted, because you felt as though you'd put so much input in, but you had so much more to give. You had so much more that you wanted to do. And at the time as well, the football club was still, as it is now, it's still an absolute shambles, a total basket case in terms of its relationship with supporters. And it took a good, it was a good year before I then kind of stuck my head above the parapet again and was approached, because I had decided at this point I didn't want anything to do with fan groups anymore. I didn't want anything to do with the supporters groups. I had done my time, if you like. I hadn't been treated respectfully. People were still firing bullets at me. I was still getting hammered. There was comments constantly being made about me, and I just felt as though I'm the bad guy here. But I got asked by a prominent Northeasterner who had been involved in previous campaigns alongside Sir John Hall, who said, "Look, the club. I've been approached by the club, and the club are desperate to talk to people like yourself. They're desperate to start a dialogue, but it's got to be done properly. Now, there is an invite there that we can start afresh if it's willing to do it properly. And I spoke to you, Steve. I spoke to a journalist from the Evening Chronicle. We sat in Rev's bar, just down from your office.
Yeah, Revolution, yeah.
And we sat. I'm talking. You can tell I've got a daughter who's a student who was in Leeds because they just call it Revs.
Revs.
Yeah.
Down with the kids.
See, I'm down with the kids, really. And you, those three people convinced me that there was a need to really see if we could get back in front of Derek Lambias and the board and do away with this bitterness that was really undermining everything. And that was when we set up NUFC Fans United.
And we're going to do a separate program on that.
But that was where I saw the need for an organization that was willing to talk respectfully and do as much as they could for the fans, because by then there was just a massive brick wall that was sitting as an obstacle between the fans and the club. And it wasn't, I didn't think it was healthy. I didn't think it was doing anybody any good at all. I was convinced by yourself. I was convinced by the other two people that I mentioned that if it was done right, it would work. And that's why we set up on that Fans United path. But yes, I was disappointed. Moving right the way forward, because a lot of what we can talk about with the fans forum and it'll be covered in those shows. And when
let's look at the trust now. I mean, look, I had that brief spell on the board where I was co-opted on and asked to go on, and I've got to be honest, I enjoyed my time. Alex Hurst was the chair. I know that that first meeting, I remember walking into the first meeting, and because it was top heavy with people from another fanzine who had particular opinion of me, I wouldn't say I was welcomed with open arms, rather through gritted teeth. But it was the right thing, I think Alex felt, and I was happy to get involved. And I did my best. I helped, during a period of discontent at the club. God, haven't we had so many of them? But I managed to help with a recruitment video and bring ex-players in, and we managed to pull in some huge numbers on the membership, which again they were thankful for. And I enjoyed that brief period, that brief flirtation on there. I remember though, and I'm sure you do, me coming to you, Steve, in particular, and saying, look, do you mind if I do this? Because, you did essentially, make a fight for me. And, you gave us some sound advice. I did it. And then, I did step away. I did step down. I didn't have to step down. They always need somebody to step down off the committee when it comes to elections. And I was only too happy to step down. My opinion on the trust now, I don't think it does enough. And, I'm not going to use this show as a way of slagging them off, having a pop. It's my opinion. I genuinely, although I'm a member, I think during this period of the takeover, I feel they've sat on the fence and they've got spelks up their backside, and I just think they could have done so much more. And there is so much to come out about. The takeover process that has gone on over the last 15 months that, by the time this show goes out in August, maybe we'll have new owners, maybe we won't. But, there was an opportunity for the trust to speak to the Premier League and they didn't take it. And they took it, but they didn't take it and ask the right questions. And I think that really showed their true colours at this current moment in time. And then the launch of the pledge scheme for me, although will be a fantastic donation to charity, and I keep saying that, I just felt that it was ill-timed and ill thought out. And I know it was a plan. It was certainly in planning when I was part of the NUST board. It's been a dream of theirs to own a percentage, but I do personally feel that it's something which will never work. And they may have got it if Newcastle had been relegated last season, and then we're on the precipice of dropping down again into Sunderland's division. then maybe it's an option. And you know, if the club was in serious financial trouble, they could have possibly done what they wanted to do. I know fan ownership's always been a dream, but for me, Cloud Cuckoo Land, I think it'll be a great donation to charity. But that's my say. So we'll go around the board to finish off. Steve, current situation in the trust. What's the way forward for them?
Always remember that, yes, the lads are volunteers. The lasses are volunteers, just like it was in our day. And that's why I have tried my best not to criticise the individual, but perhaps question the process that they're going through. I think I've spoken to board members recently. As I said earlier, at least three of the board members are aware of my position regarding what we've described as the elephant in the room. I was promised they would get back to me with an explanation or their take on what's happening. They all claimed that they knew nothing about it, or when they did become aware of it, they had been told various things about the situation. Having found that constitution in my laptop, in among all those emails, and I read the constitution, I think, guys, you might think it's got nothing to do with you, but you're actually part of something that I don't think you realise ties you legally into something serious, because that the constitution of an organisation like that, you are open to scrutiny, and questions could be asked about your conduct and about your standing on that committee if something has occurred, you haven't reported it and it hasn't been investigated, as it would be on any formal cooperative society or other type of organisation that involves finance. So worry about it. In the recent past, I feel as though that, very similar to you, I suppose, in the pledge scheme, I thought the timing was bad. I didn't necessarily agree with why it was rushed out in the way that it did, other than I thought it undermined a lot of other things that were going on, particularly the work that was being done by Keith in trying to drive forward the NCSL case. I felt as though it was done. It was like sort of, that type of manner of approach. I found that disappointing, because I thought that there was so much for them to gain by getting behind that campaign and supporting Keith. At no point did I think that Keith was asking them for money or asking them for time or anything like that. He was asking them for their support, and I think when they turn around and say they're giving their support, I personally feel as though it was like either through gritted teeth or
disingenuous.
It was vacant. It was a vacant look. Yeah, I support you. That type. And I found that disappointing. And why it was done like that, I don't know. Where they're heading now, I don't know. I don't know where the pledge scheme is. It's sitting, I think last time I heard, £107,000. That would mean that if they wanted to get to that target, they might make it in 8 years, 10 years. I don't know. What I feel as though they're going to get is they're going to, if new owners come in, they're going to get a seat on a fans forum, which is what they had and which is what they threw out. And disposed of, and didn't want for a long time to be party to, and did everything they could to break over the period of time from when I was involved in the fans forum until I consider it reached its demise in 2019. Because basically it's never met since then. And I have mentioned that on many occasions to people in the press who clamber and ask why the fans forum's not been meeting, because those guys used to get days and days and days of column inches from the questions that we raised at fans forums. Now they don't get any. And they wonder why they're scrambling around. They wonder why they're treated in the manner that they are by the club. they wonder why they're not getting the answers that fans are looking for, and they wonder why the club sits there apparently dumb. It's because nobody asks them the questions in the right way, in the right format, because people decided that format wasn't right because of the people who are sitting around the table.
Interesting. Okay, Neil, over to you, mate. Your final thoughts on NUST and how they perform these days and what the future is for them.
Current situation for me is I'm not impressed with how they respond to criticism. What aboutism and turning guns on people and causing pylons on social media and writing poor, ill thought out statements and chucking certain accusations at people back at them because they can. That's rubbish. But perhaps that's a generational thing. Maybe I just don't understand how the generation below me work anymore. I don't know. The pledge, I think, is ill thought out. It smacks of the Arsenal Supporters Trust holding the so-called golden share, which is an anachronism. It's from a different time. 1% of a club gets you very little more than 0% of the club, other than maybe access to shareholders meetings. Not going to get you more than that. When we did Yes We Can, we were talking about owning the whole bloody thing. How we would have made it run after that's another matter, but that's by the by. That's back to Father Ted and the cows. I think it's a fantastic idea to push the ideals of the trust in a time where they're hoping to piggyback on the back of the drive to get more fan involvement with clubs and using the 49+1 concept, which, can I see anybody in the Premier League agreeing to anything like that? Nah, not now. We're in a different time. So I just think it's a great idea in the wrong time. And I don't want to knock it. I don't want to be seen to be knocking it. But I think it is going to end up to be a fantastic donation to charity. However, I even saw somebody close to the trust using that as a stick to beat Steve with in the food bank. I mean, come on, guys. How we? Is there any point in that? And that's what you need to get yourselves uninvolved with and be bigger than that. And that really disappoints me. There's somebody who spent time with Steve writing that bloody constitution that Steve found. time and time on a bloody old school computer, breaking me back in the study, rereading and rereading things. To see where it's at now, it frustrates me. I think there's always been a problem with the trust, and I'll go back to when I was interim chair, about where the trust ends, a certain fanzine starts, and these days another fans group, which is mainly London-based, ends. And there's too much grey there. And now whilst that presents opportunities, like, for example, you could have somebody who has 3 hats on that trust board, who may say to the press one thing with their trust hat on, another thing with their fanzine hat on, and another thing with their fans group hat on. I don't think they use those opportunities well enough, because I know there's also little divisions within those sectors at the minute.
Divisions within divisions. That is so Newcastle United, by the way. Which is
so Newcastle United. Yes, absolutely. I don't think they use that well enough, but equally, it's also tainting their decision making. They need to stop blurring the edges and create hard lines. And you're only going to get anywhere. And I said this probably to Steve, 2010, usually the year we've been talking about, that tumultuous year, trust-wise. That was where the lines had to stop being blurred, and they were being smudged even further because of certain individuals trying to protect their own self-interest, some of whom seem to have gone to ground of late, which is interesting. It frustrates me a lot because, as somebody who believes passionately in the concept and was a founder of the trust. I genuinely don't like being accused of being somebody who's knocking it, who's not backing what they do. But equally, I don't like some of the very disingenuous and petty things they get themselves involved with, which there's no need for at the moment. And I'd like to see a resolution of that. I've said before on shows on this on my channel, we're blessed with a platform to help reach out to fans in the way we did with the Roadshows, in a virtual way, I guess. And those divisions will only be healed when everybody starts using these platforms for the greater good to start putting the sticking plasters over those cracks. And when you've got somebody who, or an organisation where their immediate response, if they're criticised, is to turn around and fight and chuck bombs and turn guns on people, that isn't going to help heal the divides. All it's going to do is help make it worse. I've seen some of the things thrown at Steve, and well, in the week we're recording this, Steve's been the butt of a lot of things this week, which I think are utterly unfair.
That's Steve Hasty.
From very predictable individuals. We could have written the names down before it started, and there's no need for that.
No, I agree 100%. As I say, we filmed this in July. Obviously, we're putting it out in August with me working away this week. But Keith, we'll leave the final word on NUST to you. And obviously, the lads have, mentioned there, obviously, the emergence of you as on your black and white steed or zebra or whatever you want to think of it as, and putting your head above the parapet, as Steve mentioned earlier. You obviously have had communications with NUST recently, but overall, your view on NUST and how it is today and how you see it going forward.
I think first thing I like to say is anybody that does anything positive for Newcastle United or for the fans would get my back, and so I'm a big backer of anybody that does something proactively. But I think the whole fans forum at Newcastle has got division in it, and I think that what it does, it presents opportunity. When those opportunities come along, you've got to sometimes divorce your agendas and see which opportunity takes precedence. At the moment, when 97% of your customer base is saying to you, this is your paying customer base, is saying to you, my choice, 97%, is for the takeover. That organisation then has a duty of care to follow the 97%. If that company went to the fan base and said, what percentage of your backer pledge, for example, would it get 97%? And sometimes when you run an organisation, you've got to make a decision. What do we back first? And with the takeover being very time sensitive, I think it was imperative that the trust stopped and put priority into the takeover. And being a person who has an agenda, i.e. NCSL, I can say to you, yeah, I've got a massive agenda. It's to get a takeover done and get the hell out of here. So once that takeover takes place, everything else, such as the trust, the pledge, and everything else, can flourish, and people can fight for whatever's on the table. But for me, I go back to opportunity. When 97% of your database, your membership paid, says we want to take over, opportunities come your way. As a trust, you had two opportunities. The first one was with Richard Masters, where you're given a series of questions, and in the next show we might talk about where the questions came from and what the questions were. And you had the opportunity to make him squirm and to do what Newcastle United's tried to do this week, and that was ask Richard Masters pertinent questions about why the takeover never happened. But people at the trust declined to do that, so therefore it became a nothing meeting. The second time I witnessed, because I was online, when Keir Starmer had a national talk in, which I was on and the trust were on, and they were given an opportunity to represent the North East. To me, the obvious thing to say then was, we've been harmed by the ESL through our takeover. The cartel has actually hit our takeover. But instead, what did they do? They pushed membership. They pushed the £3 membership, which I thought was a lost opportunity. In the same way as I thought they lost an opportunity with Richard Masters, which takes me back to the next opportunity is this week. The club contacted me on Thursday night, as you know, and the club have put the gauntlet down to the Premier League. And the club have told me that if you back this transparency move, we will get the takeover. If 97% of your people want a takeover, then I think you should back the club. And yet I saw a statement this week where it was supporting it at the start, and by the end of the meeting, it just attacked the club. And I think anybody can attack this club, but you've got to go back to your choices. Why are you attacking somebody that you want to leave when he's trying to leave? Do you understand what I'm saying? It's like decking your wife as she walks into the meeting for your divorce proceedings. She's divorcing you. Let it happen. So if Mike Ashley's going to leave the club, he's going to spend millions on getting this takeover, then let him do it. But don't have a spat as he's doing it. So for me, I'll take any support I can get. I've had no support. And just to bury that myth, I'd like to say that the trust got some criticism for not supporting NCSL. I'm one man working from home. I'll take any support or help I can get. But all we agreed to do, I spoke to Greg, who I get on with, and we just agreed that I would appear to support them and he would appear to support me. But I've had no support back. So Steve Hasty is dead right in what he's saying. I haven't had any help or support. And I would welcome any support because I say I'm just one man. You know, I get a lot of criticism on the journey.
What does that phrase mean? Appear to support you and appear to support them. Is that like you're putting on a false like impression?
The members of the trust were critical on Twitter, very critical, that they weren't seen to be supporting NCSL. There's a lot of people have supporters, you know, an awful lot like you three, but I can name a lot of groups that support us. You know, NUFC 24 and the Magpie Group and various people that support and help us through the journey. But the trust, it's well known. I've been given it in writing that they couldn't be seen to support us because if they did, it could ruin the relationship with Richard Masters. They then said that came from a committee member, but the truth is, I've had no support since. So the truth is that all they've agreed to do is thumbs up each other. You know, I believe there's a need for a trust. I believe that the trust's schemes and ideas are good once we get the takeover. But until we get the takeover, I think takeover takes priority. When 97% of your people are backing that, then I think you have a duty to them. 97% of people say, we'll fight tooth and nail for your takeover because that's what you want as our members. And what we won't do is rattle the club's cage because they're the ones. I tell you what, the day Mike Ashley packs it in or gets enough or says he's not spending money, it's over. Everything's over. And then you stay with Mike Ashley and Steve Bruce ad infinitum. So for me, I think it's lost opportunity. I think on the times they've had to do it, they could have done more. And I hope that they do support the takeover more because that's all I'm interested in.
Fascinating stuff. And I mean, obviously, we've gone well into extra time, 2 hours, 20 odd minutes today. But lads, superb. I think, brilliant insight. And as I say, we've just been truthful. I think a lot of people would be interested in this episode in particular. And, I don't think we've told anything out of school. I think we've been very honest and it's our opinion. And, from our perspective, I think, well done, lads. I know that was a hard one in particular for you, Steve H, and for you, Mitch, because, you were in the trenches on this. And Keith, thanks for your interjections. But we will look at NUFC Fans United in the next episode, which is a lot more lighthearted and a lot more enjoyable, it has to be said. But for now, thanks very much for watching. Take care and bye-bye.
Cheers, everyone.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn.